here's the series. Okay, we kicked it off last week. If you want to go watch the message, it was really awesome. Great conversation around the mission of City Church and our last value. So we wrapped up Purple Cow, which was creating something truly remarkable here in Boulder with the idea of this intro to a series, which was helping people find their way to God from where they are. And the conversation was getting people from the front door to the couch to the kitchen table. And when it comes to becoming family, like if you come in my home, there's some intimacy that happens in a home, and it's a progression. The front door is kind of that first barrier, right? The UPS man doesn't normally get past the front door, or the mailman doesn't, and if he does, there's normally a problem in the home, right? You with me on that? So normally the front door is a barrier for relationships. So if you can get past the front door, you kind of move to the couch, and there's some shoulder-to-shoulder space. Maybe you're getting a little comfortable, but you're still not super close. And then there's the table, which normally right around a meal, sharing a meal, looking each other in the face, is where real connection starts to happen. And so we're talking about becoming family, and specifically today we're talking about moving from the front door to the kitchen table. So the front door to the couch. Last week we talked about just getting to the front door, or through the front door, or if you go back and listen to it, even through the roof if you have to get them in the house, like whatever it takes to get people into the family. That's our heartbeat. That's why we served at Crestview today, just so you know, is that we're not a weekend church. We're going to be a church that meets on the weekends, but we're also so much more than that. And so thank you guys for serving so well this week. Now, as we have this conversation, two things that I love about Chris Pratt's speech. Now, it's much longer. You should go watch it because it's really, really funny. But two things. First one is this, that he is definitely someone I would call comfortably uncomfortable. Right? Like you could see the other announcer on the stage, like she was so awkward when he started talking about poop. And he's just a guy that embraces being uncomfortable. And even talking about his faith, like it's a pretty cool way that's an uncomfortable thing to do in that scenario. And so he's definitely comfortable, uncomfortable, but also what I love is he said that you and I were not perfect. He said, people tell you you're perfect just the way you are. No, you're not. And I was like, I think all of us know that, but then we have this thing going on in culture that we are not allowed to tell people that, but then we know it about ourselves, but then we still have to pretend like it's not true. And so none of us are perfect, and I appreciate that. And I was thinking about this conversation, and the reason that video is important is because as we're becoming family, as we are introducing more and more people to the family, and we are engaging the world around us, and this family is growing, that means the more people are going to be a part of it, and the more imperfect people that are a part of it, the more uncomfortable moments we're going to have. If you hang out with me long enough, it's going to get uncomfortable. One, because I'm just weird, but also because I'm probably going to say something dumb, do something dumb, be inconsiderate like earlier today, right? Cat got stung by a bee, and I'm such a jerk. Like at first I said I'm sorry, and then like later Danielle confirmed, and I was like, oh, Cat got stung by a bee, and I'm like, sorry, and like kept moving, and I was like, well, that was a jerk move of me, I'm sorry. So there's moments where you're going to be uncomfortable, and that's what we're talking about is as the family grows, as we are becoming family, you're going to have to figure out to embrace this tension of living a life that is comfortably uncomfortable. And I was thinking about this picture. You know what's missing from this picture? A toilet. A toilet. Why? So central elements of a home: front door, couch, kitchen table. But you know how your real friends are? Two ways you can know who your real friends are: if they help you move, and if they can poop in your house without being uncomfortable. Right? That's how you know. Right? If you can go to your friend's house. Now listen. You don't like announce it. You don't make it weird. Like you don't celebrate the fact that you pooped at your friend's house, but like, you can get to a place where you're so comfortable that you're at your friend's house that you can just poop and it happened and you don't have to worry about it, right? But like there's that etiquette, right? Where you're in a guest home for the first time and you're like, oh no, we got to go now, right? Like, so, and we've all seen those movies that make fun of those scenes, right? And they end up using the hand towel. Oh, so bad. All right. So, we're talking about becoming family. And the other day, this is hilarious. Grayson's potty training, and he's doing really, really well. And so we're teaching him, and the goal is for him to tell us when he has to go poop. It doesn't always happen that way, but we just emergency get him in there. But the other day, he's like, Dad, I got to go poop. Cool, man. So I sit him in there on the toilet, and I'm standing in the kitchen, and I'm not looking at him, but he can see me, and I don't realize it. And so all of a sudden, I hear from the bathroom, Dad, go away. And I was like, oh, sorry, dude. Like, didn't realize. And it's funny, he's 3 years old. Like what in him makes him feel uncomfortable, at 3? And so there's something in a family of you're still embracing this comfortably uncomfortable tension, right? Of when you're pooping in the house. You're like, what in the world are we talking about? I know you might be really, really confused right now, but I promise this is going somewhere. Here's the reality. We know everybody poops, right? Everybody poops, but there's this weird tension of being comfortably uncomfortable when you get into family. And here's the reality. Here's where we're going. we all have crap in our lives that we don't want other people to see. Right? That's the reality. You with me? Come on, that line was awesome. Oh, yeah, I crafted that for a while. Okay, we all have crap in our lives that we don't want other people to see. And listen, the more you become family, the more crap you're going to see. Right? Daniel and I lived together for 3 months. Okay? We're not strangers to the bathroom anymore, right? Daniel can come over to my house anytime, but he uses the downstairs bathroom because that's respectful, right? and vice versa. And so we have this tension of we all are imperfect people, and the more that you live life together, it does start to get uncomfortable. And here's the deal. Religion is unique because religion comes along and says, hey, you might have some crap in your life, but you know, like that can of like potpourri in the bathroom, or like the Febreze spray that's like lavender flowers, right? And so then you poop in a bathroom and you spray that. You know what you just did? You just mixed poop and lavender flowers. And so now it smells like poop and lavender flowers. You didn't get rid of the poop smell. All you did was mix and make it nastier. And it didn't really help, right? So just embrace it. I think religion comes along and it kind of does this, like, hey, spray some of this on there, kind of, try to cover it up and add some external focus. And if you can just try to do some good things, and then maybe you can have favor with God and other people. And religion is very externally focused. Now, Jesus is very internally focused. And so rather than focusing on a religion, Jesus came and he taught us to focus on a relationship. If we're going to deal with the crap on the inside, then we've got to get past the Febreze can and actually deal with what's going on. So here's where we're going. We have to learn to be comfortably uncomfortable. Here's why. Because if you're like me, you hear that statement and you're like, it sounds uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to be comfortably uncomfortable because it doesn't sound like it's going to be pleasant. But here's the deal. You and I cannot, here's the first big idea. You and I can't have change and comfort at the same time. They cannot coexist. You and I cannot have change and comfort at the same time. Think about it. When you go to the gym, you're sacrificing comfort for change, right? There's nothing comfortable about the gym. There's nothing comfortable about pushing past a certain number of reps and breaking down muscle tissue and building more, right? You go to the gym, why? For change. You intentionally sacrifice comfort for change. You can't have both. Yeah, I guess you could carry a bag of Cheetos into the gym with you, but you're probably not going to see the results that you want. And so this is not just in the working out realm. It functions the same in relationships. Think about it. When people get married, you're taking two imperfect people full of crap and putting them together in a relationship for commitment for life. There's going to be some uncomfortable moments when that happens, but people do it anyway. Why? Because change is not always a bad thing. They're willing to sacrifice comfort for change, right? It's a progress in the relationship. Same thing, kids. Not everybody ends up having kids on purpose, but Danielle and I did. We have our kids on purpose, and it was a decision that we made. We decided to sacrifice comfort for change, to grow our family, to add to our family. And you know what? It sacrifices a lot of comfort. Every day I'm realizing, like, holy moly, I see like videos of some of the people that I know that are like either in college or still single, and they're like out doing cool things, and I'm like, whoa, that sounds like it would be really fun, but I can't anymore because I have kids, And I remember, like, wow, we gave up some things. We sacrificed comfort for change. The same thing with new relationships. Anytime you decide to let someone new into your life and to build relationships and build community, you and I, we sacrifice comfort for change. Now, here's the reality. Change is good. The reason all of those things happen is because change is not a bad thing. But when we want to experience change, we willingly sacrifice comfort for that change. That's why many of us, for the record, are fasting over the next 21 days. We are sacrificing comfort for change in our city, in the lives of our friends, and the lives of our neighbors, and our own hearts and minds. We're sacrificing comfort for change. You with me on this? And so if I can create a hunger, even if you're not a follower of Jesus in the room, this principle still stands. You and I cannot have change and comfort at the same time. And odds are we're going to consistently find ourselves in places where we want to change, whether it be our habits or our mindsets or our emotions or our relationships or our community. And so we've got to get to a place where we can find this tension of being comfortably uncomfortable. Now listen, if you're a follower of Jesus in the room, you and I, we became part of the family of God through faith in Jesus. The Bible talks about how we're adopted in the family of God when we believed in Jesus and what he done. And a part of becoming a part of the family of God is we also adopt the mission of that family. And here's the cool thing. That mission is to keep extending the invitation to the family to others. That's not complicated. So like by God's grace, we get adopted in the family. We didn't earn it, right? He paid for all the court fees and the adoption papers and the process, and right, Jesus paid for all of that. We get adopted into the family. And then we get invited to invite other people into the family. And it's like, wow, this is pretty cool. And so it's a really, really simple concept. But the reality is this. You might have seen churches before, or I've seen some churches like this. And I've probably been guilty of being in one or two at a time. But you see churches that kind of come across as exclusive. Like there's this kind of like tight-knit club of us four and no more. Like not that they'll smile at you and you're like welcome, but you're not allowed in. Or there's like a wall or a barrier or something you don't know what you have to do to get into that circle, and you probably have seen that. And what I want you to know is it's not that those churches don't love people and don't love God. What happens is they have fallen in love with comfort over change. See, one of the reasons that people have negative church experiences is because there's this mindset that happens internally that we can't always identify. And we love comfort more than change. All of us do, right? It's why we'll skip the gym and eat a bag of Cheetos. Like it's a constant tension. And so then when it comes to relationships, churches get stuck here. And the only thing that can change it is the love of God. Because God's not willing to just get comfortable and say, well, my family's pretty good as it is. And so here's the deal. If you're a follower of Jesus in the room, change is not an option. It's not an option for you and I. See, the beauty of this conversation that we're having today as becoming family is because we're part of the family, we get to extend this. And it is that there's an overflow. Our relationship with God and being a part of the family naturally starts to overflow into wanting others to be in the family. It's not like I have to invite, so some religions, right? Like, all right, you got to go invite, 20 people this year to get your good mark with God. Right? That's not that's religion, and that's external works, and it's spraying lavender, spray on top of a poop smell. It's not fixing anything. Our relationship with God, intimacy with God, is what Jesus invites us into. And the overflow of that relationship with God, the more time you spend with him, you start to love what he loves, and he loves you and me and the world around us. And so the overflow of intimacy with God is ministry for God. That word ministry simply means doing good for others. And so as you and I are becoming family, I'm just trying to build a case of why we would want to embrace being comfortably uncomfortable. And so if you're not a follower of Jesus in the room, I want you to know that this conversation is going to be really, really helpful because we're going to look at Jesus and his heart for you and I and the world around us. And so it's going to be a lot of insight. So here's where we're going to be. 3 things that we can learn from Jesus on living a comfortably uncomfortable life. You ready? Yeah? Good? All right, here we go. So point number 1, we have to ask for his perspective. If we're going to live a comfortably uncomfortable life, we have to ask for his perspective. Check this out. Matthew chapter 9, verse 9. Jesus is walking along, and he sees a man named Matthew sitting at his tax collector's booth, and he says to Matthew, follow me and be my disciple, be my follower. And then Matthew got up and followed him. Well, that's pretty straightforward, right? Like, all right, that's great. I don't know if that actually happened that fast. It probably didn't. Like, hey, come on. All right, let's go. Right? It probably didn't happen like that, but I want you to see what's happening here. Jesus is just walking along, and he sees a guy named Matthew. Now, here's what you need to know. Matthew is a tax collector. He is the scum of the earth. So the Romans have taken over, and the Jews are under oppression, and they went into these little cities, and they appointed Jews to become the tax collectors for that region. So Matthew is one of the tax collectors. Now, I want you to think about it. The Roman government came in and said, hey, Matthew, here's the tax you have to collect, but you can require anything on top of that to pay your salary. And so tax collectors are the scum of the earth because they are their own people. They're also Jews who are now robbing their own people to fill their own pockets in addition to the Roman tax they have. So everybody hates the tax collector. So I want you to see when people are walking by and they see Matthew, it's not like, hey, there's a tax collector booth like when you go to the farmer's market and like, hey, there's some apples, there's some oranges, there's Matthew. No, it's not like that, right? It's like, I hate that guy, and you probably want to run him over with your chariot if you had one. I don't know if you have chariots probably a high skill thing. So, right, I'm just going to go kick his table real fast and run away. But Matthew's a jerk of a guy, and no one likes him. He's probably hard to love. So the only people that will hang out with Matthew are other people that don't have a problem with taking advantage of those around them. And so Matthew only has a very small circle of friends. And I want you to see that Jesus saw Matthew. This is really unique. He sees Matthew in a way that no one else can see Matthew. Everyone else just sees a dirtbag, and Jesus simultaneously sees Matthew's mess and his miracle. He sees his potential and all of his flaws. Simultaneously, Jesus can see all of Matthew, all of his crap, and all of what could be. And when Jesus looks at you and I, he can see all of us, all of the good, all of the bad. And here's the beauty of what's going to happen. After this story, if we watch the story of Jesus, we're going to see that Jesus is going to end up ultimately sacrificing his comfort for our change. Jesus is going to give his life on the cross, not because he deserved it, but because he willingly is making the payment for adoption into the family of God. And he's going to sacrifice his comfort, because there's nothing comfortable about being crucified on a cross, for our change. And when I say our, I mean guys like Matthew and like me and like you. This is amazing. That when Jesus sees us, he sees all of us. And so that's why religion doesn't play a part with Jesus, because there's not enough dressing up and covering up on the outside that makes us right with God. And Jesus can see through that, and he has a remedy for that. Now here's amazing. I want you to see Jesus is walking along. Nothing unique about he didn't like go out of his way. He didn't know Matthew would be there at that moment. He just happens to be in the normal rhythms of life, and he sees Matthew in a way that normally we don't see. And here's the deal. I want you to just think about this week. As we're walking along the normal rhythms of life this week, Monday through Friday, you're going to be at work, you're going to be at the gym, you're going to be at the grocery store. What if you could see what Jesus sees when you're just in the rhythms of your life? Every moment of every day this week carries the potential for a God moment just like this. The challenge is that you and I need to be able to see what God sees. When we look at people, we need to be able to see not just Matthew, the dirtbag, but Matthew in his entire potential. Now check this out. The second half, then Jesus looks at him and he says, "Follow me." And it's like that simple. I want you to, so everybody else, right, the religious people are going to look at Matthew and they're going to try to say, he's got to do all of these X, Y, and Z things. But Jesus simply says what? Follow me. You're like, wait, follow me in what? It's just follow me. It's not follow me and do this and that, or hey, do these things and then you can follow me. Hey, go to church, be a good person, read the Bible, give some money over here, quit acting this way, quit living this way, take some of these bad words out of your vocabulary. It's none of that. Jesus simply looks at him and he says, follow me. And I want you to know, guys, listen, it's really that simple. And when it comes to becoming family, you and I have to embrace a different perspective. Everyone is welcome. And here's the beauty. Listen, as we're having this conversation, our team is so good at this right now. Everyone is welcome. Everyone is invited. And there are no rules to follow. There's simply an invitation on the table for anyone who would receive it. Follow Jesus. That's it. That's it. And there's nothing else. And so our value, when we say you don't have to believe to belong, we can mean it with all of our heart. Because Jesus simply gives the invitation to follow. And I want you to think, Matthew was probably not an easy guy to love. Jesus inviting him into his life did not make things easier for Jesus. And so for the first thing you and I can do as we go into this week is to ask God for his perspective. And so what I'm going to encourage you to do at the end of this is set an alarm. I'm going to do it with you. 8 a.m. every morning starting tomorrow for the next week. Set an alarm that'll go off. And the first thing it's going to say is ask God for his perspective today. God, can you just help me to see what you see in people? Can you just help me to just get rid of all the presuppositions that my mind wants to carry? The people that I like, people that I don't like, no matter how I try to look at them. The boss that I'm irritated with, the coworker that I'm mad at, the roommate that I wish wasn't there anymore. Whatever it might be, would you give me your perspective this week just to see what you see? Second thing is this, is we're becoming family. We have to be intentional about our position. Jesus shows us we have to have perspective that's different, but we also have to be intentional about our position. Check this out, verse 10. This is really, really cool. In verse 10, it says, later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many other tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. That's a mouthful, right? A bunch of other scumbags. That's what that means, okay? And Matthew has friends that are in a very small niche that no one wants to hang out with. And Jesus gets invited to their house, to their kitchen table, like becoming family on the opposite side. You're like, whoa, now it's getting uncomfortable. Here's my first question. Would you and I get invited to this party? For the people that look nothing like Jesus, they want him there. And that's my heartbeat. Every time I can think about it, man, every time I look at the friends around me who are not religious or they don't like to go to church or whatever, my question is, do they want me around? Because notice who's not invited to this party. The religious people. In just a second, we're going to see they're standing outside the house mad about it, right? But Jesus got invited to this party. This is amazing. So here's my question for you and I. Do people who look nothing like Jesus want you and I around? I hope that they do. I think our team does a really good job of this already. But for the religious people, why don't they get invited? Because they're judgmental. So Jesus positions himself in a way, he puts himself around Matthew and his friends to where he could get invited to a party like this. But religious people, they have positioned themselves in a way that they are trying to stay away from people like Matthew. And so they're not in circles of influence where they could actually get invited to a party like this. And what's unique is Jesus says in John 3, he says, I didn't come to judge the world, but to save it. And so he's not carrying judgment into Matthew's home, like, man, you guys need to clean up your act. Now here's what's important. If Jesus had not leveraged his position in this moment, his perspective would not have mattered. If he wouldn't have been intentional about his position, about being around people who look nothing like him, his perspective would not have mattered. It doesn't matter if we have eyes to see if we don't have hands to love. You understand me? Like, it's not complicated. It's not rocket science. But again, comfort likes to sneak in, and all of a sudden we find ourselves not around circles that God wants us to be in. And so here's what happens. In some churches, I used to work in an established church, a couple hundred people. And what happens when you get a lot of Christians is they start to become friends and they hang out with each other, and unintentionally they start to isolate themselves from the world around them. And so it's not a bad thing, like not doing it in a mean way, but you have a bunch of Christian friends all of a sudden, and you only hang out with your family rather than being intentional about inviting people into that family. And so here's what happens is that as our family grows, if we're not careful, some people get insulated, right, to where it's only Christians, like your circle of influence, your position is only with people who look and talk and smell like you, which is a problem if we're going to be about building God's family. Some people get isolated. So it's not so much that they're not being intentional about it, but maybe it's because they're lazy or they're tired or they're working a lot of hours, or they're simply being unintentional and they're isolated from the opportunity to be around people like Matthew. Jesus calls us to be integrated, right? When we moved to Boulder, one of our goals was to meet 100 people in 100 days. Just finding ways to do. This happened this week. We were, Thursday, we had our city group in our home. We have a group that meets in our home 6 to 8 on Thursday. It's awesome, a lot of fun. And so spring's here. We're like, let's go outside. It's going to be awesome. It was super awkward, by the way, because like all the food was inside and all the cool stuff was outside. And so people were like outside hanging out, but then they went inside to get the food, but then they didn't come back outside. And so like half of us were standing outside, like, where the heck is everybody? And then everybody else is upside, like, where's everybody? Kind of weird. But as we were out there, all of my neighbors just like came out of nowhere, like, oh, cool, there's some cornhole and Michael Jackson playing in a fire pit. And like all my neighbors are coming and hang out with us all of a sudden. I'm like, well, that was easy. I didn't invite them. I didn't try. They just like showed up. We had a bubble machine going. All of a sudden, all these kids are going everywhere. I'm like, what is going on out here? And I was like, man, this is a really, really cool place to be in a situation where we can embrace living like that. And so now our group is going to be intentional about the next time we're only going to cook outside. All the food will be outside. I figured it out. It's how to get people to stay outside, keep the people outside. But we got to be intentional. Here's the deal. Here's what I'm getting at. If your rhythms and my rhythms, if they limit our interaction with the world around us, we've got to get outside. We've got to sacrifice comfort for change. And it's uncomfortable, but Jesus does it because the family is more important than his comfort. So the first thing was this, perspective. God, give me perspective this week to see what you see. The second thing is this, God, would you give me opportunities So to see what you see and then opportunities to engage, like my neighbors coming out. It was just a moment. It made our group starting late. It was unique and different or whatever, but I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to love and serve and engage my neighbors and introduce them to some of our friends. And so we just kind of embraced it and rolled with it. And so you might have opportunities that are going to fall in your lap this week that are an opportunity to love and serve people and get them one step closer to becoming a part of the family of God. Here's the last thing. We can learn from Jesus. We have to consistently check our posture. So if we're going to become family, we've got to ask for his perspective. We've got to be intentional about our position, but we also have to consistently check our posture. Check this out in verse 11. When the Pharisees, that's the religious leaders of the day, when they saw Jesus eating with Matthew and his buddies, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with such scum?" Right? They use the word. They're not holding back any punches. And this is awesome. When Jesus heard this, he said, and I just want you, Jesus is inside hanging out with Matthew and his buddies, like a bunch of them all around the table. They're probably having a good time partying, wines everywhere, food everywhere. And then, I don't know, Jesus hears them talking. They're outside. And so I don't know if he like leaned over to the window and be like, "Hey, like this is what happens. Healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do." You're like, well, that's awkward, right? And if you're Matthew sitting there, I want you to think about how this sounded, right? Like you're sitting there hanging out with Jesus, having a good time, and all of a sudden you hear him yell to the religious people outside, "Hey, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do." And like he's pointing it at Matthew when he does it. And Matthew's like, yeah, like, you know, and I think Matthew kind of embraced this idea of like, oh, yeah, okay, right, probably so. So what's going on here? Matthew, as he's sitting there, is like, okay, maybe that's a bit hard, but at the end of the day, he probably knows he's sick. And this is a metaphor, right? Like, we all know that we're broken. We all know that we have stuff going on. And I don't know where you are, but for me, like, it wasn't, like, a really difficult challenge when I started following Jesus at 15. Like, before that, I wouldn't use the word sick. I definitely would have used the word broken or, I had crap going on. I at least knew that. I'm like, man, there's some stuff in my life that I wish I could figure out how to get together. And so the truth is, man, we're all sick. And I think, Matthew's there probably after they hear that, they start high-fiving his buddies, like, yeah, we're all sick. And the truth is, man, we're all that way. Right? Like, listen, I'm not even consistent with the rules that I set for my kids, much less myself. And so, I don't know where your heart lands in this conversation, but deep down, I think we all know that if a right relationship with God depends on how we keep his rules, then we're in trouble. Because we don't have it all together. Now check this out, verse 13. Then Jesus adds, so he shouts out the window again, "Now go and learn the meaning of this scripture." Now you have to remember, these are religious people. They know a lot of Bible. They know a lot of religious things. And so now Jesus, tongue-in-cheek, says, "Hey, why don't you go learn the real meaning of this verse you memorized," right? So they would have known what he's about to say, but they're clearly missing it. He says, "You love religion more than you love people." He says, "Go and learn what this means. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices." What's he saying? I want you to love people, not your performance. Right? Religion is about performance. It's about do, and it's works, and it's building up favor with God and people by the external demonstration of piety or whatever it might be, these good works. And Jesus said, I want you to show mercy, which is an action toward other people in the way that we love them, not offer sacrifices in the religious acts that they have committed to. He says, I want you to love people, not performance. He says, religion is about you. Following Jesus is about others. Check this out. "For I have come to call not those who think that they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners." That's some hard language. Matthew's still sitting there, right? Like, listening to Jesus say that, and you're like, whoa. Now, they're going to be familiar with the word sinner, right? We don't use that word. The Bible uses that to describe our brokenness. That if there is a perfection standard, and that's what it takes to have a relationship with God, we're definitely somewhere below it, okay? That's what this word is getting at, that we're not perfect. But here's what's really, really cool about this conversation. Jesus called sinners and unbelievers to follow him. We saw it earlier when he did it with Matthew. And here's what I want you to see, that he didn't demand that they change first. He didn't even demand that they believe that he was the Son of God. He knew that if they just followed, if they simply took one step in his direction, it would change them. And so simultaneously, sitting there with Matthew and his buddies who look nothing like him, who the world has rejected, and everyone would say they could never have a relationship with God. Then you got people on the outside of the door that everybody thinks have a relationship with God because of how they perform externally. And Jesus actually says, actually, you guys are just as far from God as these guys are. All you got to do is follow me. It's a beautiful, beautiful invitation. And so here's the deal. Here's what I want you to do. Pull out your phone with me. Go to Monday. And as you're doing this with me, I'm setting it right now. Monday at 8 a.m. As we're becoming family, if we're going to embrace this idea of being comfortably uncomfortable, because as our family goes, it's going to continue to be uncomfortable, we're going to ask God for 3 things this week every day at 8 a.m. Number 1, God, give me your perspective. Give me your perspective today. However you want to write it. Help me to see what you see. Help me to look at people the way that you look at people. And maybe you're here and you got to start and say, God, help me to see me the way you see me. Because to be honest, my emotions and the way that I feel about myself right now are not consistent with what you're telling me to do when it comes to others. Number 1 in this reminder, God, give me perspective. Number 2, and God, give me opportunities. Give me opportunities this week to engage and to love people who look like me, who look nothing like me, whatever it might be, God. Would you just land some opportunities in my lap for me to see what you see and to love like you love? Give me opportunities. And the last thing in this reminder is, God, remind me how I got here. Remind me how I got here. You see, religion makes you prideful. That's what these guys were on the outside of the house. But following Jesus actually does the opposite. It makes you humble. Because you remember that you didn't get into this family by anything that you merited. You were adopted and paid for by someone else's blood. And so the way that we are intentional about our posture towards others, the way that we can make sure that we're not ever prideful regardless of what we find ourselves up against, is by asking God to remind us how we got in the family in the first place. Every day this week, if you and I would embrace this comfortably uncomfortable lifestyle, I think God might do something unique in and through us. So as we are becoming family, friends, we must embrace being comfortably uncomfortable, because we can't have change and comfort at the same time. We cannot grow this family and be comfortable at the same time. And so you have a couple things. You have the stickers that we are on the table and the invite cards this week. And so some of that opportunity this week might be inviting someone to the Easter service or intentionally praying for them. Maybe you're here and you need to join a city group. Listen, you need to develop some friends that you can poop around, okay? That's what city groups do. Get you to a place, get you some real friends. And so we have groups that meet. A new semester's about to start. And so we'll probably have one on Thursday and another one on a Tuesday, something like that. But city groups are a great place to get plugged in and to be a part of building family and becoming family together. Maybe you need to go through Growth Track. Maybe part of this conversation is you want to be a part of this family, and Growth Track is your next step on how to do that. And maybe you're here, friends, and you need to give your life to Jesus. Listen, he gave up his comfort for our change. And I want you to know, giving your life to Jesus, taking that one step, it's uncomfortable. It's intentionally sacrificing a little bit of comfort for change, but it's the best change that you and I could ever experience. Let me pray for us.